fake bill, a real corpse. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I'm your host, Harrington. Comment your city. I love hearing them. Wolfe follows money that shouldn't exist. If you've never seen a grown man argue with a houseplant, you've missed a corner of domestic life that I get to watch on a slow Tuesday. Nero Wolfe wasn't arguing exactly. He was discoursing, an address directed at the African violet I had the honor of not watering under any circumstances. He had carried it down from the plant rooms himself, which tells you he was either in a mood or had a point to educate. We don't do casual with living things on West 35th Street. We do rigor with a garnish of basil. I was in my chair, which is less throne and more trap, typing invoices and wondering whether I could bill a client for psychological wear and tear. From upstairs came the faint hum of the fans, and from the kitchen the solid sounds of Fritz Brenner at work composing dinner. In between, you got the Wolfe effect, silence heavy as velvet, opinions sharp as glass. "You see, Archie," Wolfe said to the violet, "there is an admirable economy in growth. A leaf devotes itself to chlorophyll because it cannot do otherwise. Any leaf that argues the point, I told him, will get a seat at your desk. I have a couple of landlords we can invite too." Wolfe flicked his eyes at me, which was the full performance. "You have read the ledger." "I've even wept over it. The Buchanan case is still in arrears." "Pfui." He shifted a quarter of an inch in the red leather chair. "The Buchanan case was a lapse in my self-command. We should accept no more louts with elaborate monograms and absent checks." I hit the period hard enough to scare a fly, and told him I concurred absolutely, provided clients were willing to be pre-screened for character and solvency by a clairvoyant. He was ready with a retort when the doorbell rang. He didn't grunt. Wolfe has opinions on when the door should ring and why, but he leaves the executing to me. I went, of course. Every time I pass the rack in the hall mirror, I check my tie. It's vanity and policy. Most people tell their story to the first suit that looks like it might understand them. The woman waiting on the stoop didn't look like she required assistance from any suit. She was 30 plus or minus 3, with hair the color of black coffee, skin like it hadn't met the New York winter yet, and eyes that could buy a state senator and return him in original packaging. She wore a slate-gray coat that had been cut for her and for nobody else, and carried a small leather case like a visiting nurse who charged by the hour. "Miss," I held the door, "if you're selling light bulbs, we have regrets." "I'm buying light, Mr. Goodwin," she said, and the voice had the downtown auditorium mix of confident and careful. "My name is Willa Dane. Mr. Wolfe is at home?" "He is, and he's as dangerous as he looks." I'd done my check of hands, neat nails, no rings, and wrists. Watch so thin you'd miss it, and I didn't see a weapon unless you counted the eyes. "Come in." She came in like she'd been briefed on our rugs. I took her coat, which was too dignified to hang anywhere but a symphony hall, and led her to the office. "Miss Willa Dane," I announced, "emissary of light." "That remains to be seen," she said, not smiling. She was careful with her glances. The books, the globes, the orchid prints, me, and then the big man in the chair. Wolfe nodded a quarter inch. "Be seated, Miss Dane. Archie, beer." That meant he'd already decided to listen. I got a bottle from the cabinet, uncapped it, and set it within easy range. Wolfe didn't touch it yet. He watched our guest, and she watched the room like she had to learn it fast and remember it forever. "I'll go ahead and make the unusual part plain," she said. "I have $1 that doesn't exist." I made a show of patting my pockets. If it's the one I've been missing for years, I'll take it now and forgive interest. She opened the case and took out a transparent folder. She slid it across my desk for Wolfe to see. It was a $1 bill. I've handled money in all stated conditions, from the crisp notes a bank uses to show affection to the soft, tired ones that have supported 3 generations, but I hadn't seen one that looked like it had been printed to negotiate with a conscience. The paper was paper, the ink was ink, the portrait was Washington like always, but I didn't feel the itch in the fingers $1 inspires. It was there and not there, like a word you can't pronounce. The serial number began with a run of zeros that would make a roulette wheel yawn. Wolfe extended 2 fingers and took the sheet. I let him have the He doesn't spend them easy. "You've had this examined?" he asked. "Yes." Willa Dane's hands were folded. "Still, but the tendons told you she did not fold them from custom. By my employer, security director, and then by a specialist he hired. Both said it's a counterfeit, but not an ordinary counterfeit." "If it buys a sandwich," I said, "we call it $1, and the delicatessen calls the police." "It won't buy anything," she said. "That's the point, and the sandwich is for my employer." "Name," Wolfe said, and tapped the corner of the plastic like a slow metronome. "And occupation." "Caspar Shellman," she said, "managing partner of the Shellman Agency, a private intelligence and analytics firm. I'm his executive assistant." I shot Wolfe a look he didn't return. We don't take a lot of trade from private intelligence outfits. They tend to believe they have a first refusal on brains. $1 that does not exist, Wolfe mused. Someone's idea of a conundrum. "She says it's the point," I said. "The point," Willa repeated. "In the last 2 months, 3 of our clients have received similar bills in courier envelopes addressed to their home addresses, marked settlement. Each envelope had a typed note, payment in full, keep this safe. No return address, no postmark, hand-delivered." "And naturally your firm investigated." "Yes." She didn't move. "We found the messenger who delivered the 3rd envelope. He said a man met him a block from the address, gave him cash, and a description, no name. After the 3rd, Mr. Shellman received this one." She nodded toward the bill on Wolfe's desk. "His home. It was propped against the knob inside his front door at 1 in the morning. "Inside," I said. "Cute. A trespass," Wolfe said. The vowel was round enough to plate and serve. He swallowed a small mouth of beer. "You're uncertain whether it is simply mischief." "I'm certain it isn't," she said, and now I heard the bone under the flesh. "Our director of security thinks someone is mocking us. Mr. Shellman thinks someone is warning him. I think someone is closing a ledger." "You're not speaking like an assistant," Wolfe said. "I speak like someone who has to keep appointments and doors. And I know Mr. Shellman wants to hire you. He asked me to come in person." That last line had the shape of a rehearsed truth. I've seen them before. They wear sincerity and leave tracks. "Why didn't Mr. Shellman come himself?" I asked. "He prefers to stay out of sight when he's nervous," she said. "And he is nervous. Yesterday someone attempted to access our internal archive. Not the current casework, the old files, a decade back. The attempt failed, but whoever tried knew what to ask for." "Names," Wolfe said. "Who has keys to the archive?" "5 people," she said. "Mr. Shellman, me, the security director, Haldy Pierce, our senior analyst, Victor Klein, and our archivist, Maris Calder." "There it is," I said. "A nice round handful. Do we get their photographs and income statements too?" "If you accept the case," she said, and for the first time her eyes skated off me and came back. "I think you will, Mr. Wolfe. You keep things that are yours in order. So does Mr. Shellman." "Flattery," Wolfe grunted. "Archie, the Federal Reserve. Has it ever issued a series with 7 leading zeros?" "Not unless Washington decided to start over," I said, and leaned in. I'd been giving the bill my share of the stare. There was a flaw, a nothing, where something should have been. The paper had microfibrils like legit currency, but when the light hit the crest, it didn't bite. "It's good work, but it doesn't want to be spent." "It wants to be found," Willa said. That landed like a hand on the table. "And kept safe." Wolfe lifted the plastic and set it down. Miss Dane, you have arrived with a curiosity and an insinuation. What you have not brought is a crime. The trespass, she said. The attempted breach. The harassment of our clients. Harassment is imprecise, Wolfe said. Trespass is concrete, but you have not reported it. You came to me. Mr. Shellman has enemies who would enjoy reading a police report with his address on it, she said, and clients who pay for confidentiality. I watched Wolfe let the word clients do its promenade. He does not love men who sell secrets, but he respects markets that pay. Fee, he said. 25,000 as a retainer, she said. Expenses covered, a success fee of twice that if you can identify the origin and intent of the bills is unstop them. I whistled under my breath and didn't turn it into a tune. Either the Shellman agency was nervous, or they were generous, or they knew what they were buying. Wolfe shut his eyes, opened them. You presume that I can act where your security men stumble. He wasn't preening. He was calibrating the insult so he could file it away without tasting it. I presume you can read a room faster than Haldy can lock one, Willa said quietly, and that Mr. Goodwin can be where he isn't supposed to, faster than any of us can print a badge. I like her, I said. She consoles while she offends. I drummed my fingers. Conditions, boss? He tilted his head. I will not leave this house, he told her. You will deliver to Mr. Shellman a list of requirements, that he bring here the 4 persons you have named at times I specify, that he surrender to me, for examination, all 4 courier envelopes and their contents, that he state plainly whether any of the 3 clients who received the bills are connected to one another by more than their business with him, and that he answer, under my questioning, whether in the last 6 months he has withheld from any client or partner a material fact that would affect a fee. She didn't blink. He won't like the last one. Then he will not like me, Wolfe said. I was watching her hands. They were steady again, fingers lightly steepled. What about the trespass at his home? I asked. You want to look at the doorknob where the fairy left the gift? We will learn more from the man than the brass, Wolfe said. If we need the brass, you will fetch it. Willa leaned forward. There's something else, she said. If you wanted to get me to sit up straight without the chiropractor, you could use the tone she used. Yesterday evening someone made a mess in Mr. Shellman's kitchen. The spice rack was rearranged. Nothing missing, but he said it looked like someone wanted him to see that they'd been there. Subtle trespass, Wolfe murmured, and this time the beer did not interest him at all. Which spices? She took that one from a pocket of memory like a card. Coriander jars swapped for cumin. Tarragon shifted to the front. Salt left on the counter. Lid off. Willa, I said, we may ask you to stay for dinner. You're our kind of witness. Wolfe's eyes were exactly as alive as a cat who has heard the bird remember to sing. I accept, he said. We are engaged. She exhaled without the show of it and nodded. Mr. Shellman will come tonight if that suits you. Wolfe nodded. 9 o'clock. Archie, call Mr. Panzer and put him at readiness. Yes, sir, I said. Saul Panzer is many things on the street that I cannot be while also being me. Anything else? The bill, Wolfe said, and tapped the plastic. Leave it. She had gotten as far as standing when the second shoe dropped, as they do when feet have more than one. It was a small envelope in her case, crisp paper with crisp edges. She hesitated, then passed it to me. This came to me this morning, she said. My apartment. I didn't tell Mr. Shellman. It was a twin to the others by description. No return address, typed label, Miss Willa Dane, with a neatness that made me hate the typist. Inside, a single note on a rectangle of bond paper. Keep this safe. No dollar, no nothing, except a scent like the ghost of fennel. Wolfe's nostrils did their minimal exercise. He took the envelope with 2 fingers. You didn't tell him because... because he would either fire me for having an undisclosed problem or promote me for being the problem, she said. Either way, he'd be wrong. Wolfe's mouth curved, not a smile, a private adjustment. Archie, record the serial number of the bill and the characteristics Miss Dane has described. Then see if Mr. Shellman can be dissuaded from melodramatic lateness. She stood. I'll have him here at 9, she said. Her eyes went to the African violet, which had done nothing to anyone and was enjoying it. Mr. Wolfe, you don't think this is random mischief. I can see that. I think, Wolfe said, that mischief does not rearrange tarragon for an audience. Go. I took her to the door. She let me help with the coat, which told me she didn't consider me a flunky, which is a point on the board. At the threshold, she paused, and the careful voice got a hairline crack. Mr. Goodwin, if this is personal, if someone is trying to humiliate Mr. Shellman through his household, then they've picked the wrong household to practice on, I said. Go on, we'll keep it safe. When I came back, Wolfe had the bill near the lamp, turning it slightly with a pencil as if he were trying not to insult it. If you tell me, I said, that $1 that won't buy a street pretzel is going to buy us a roof repair, I'll kiss the mint. It is not a counterfeit to be passed, he said. It is a certificate to be presented. He settled an inch deeper, which for him is an embrace. We will see what Mr. Shellman believes he owes. And to whom? And the spices? I asked. The spices are an essay. He closed his eyes. On appetite. The trespasser was making a claim, not possession, tarragon for front, cumin for back, salt lid off. No, not possession, hunger. Someone hungry for what? I asked. He opened one eye. For settlement, Archie. For the bill to be paid. He let the eye close again. Call Saul. At 9 o'clock sharp, the bell rang again, the kind of punctuality that either hides fear or sells it. Wolfe had spent the last 2 hours in deep communion with the bill and the violet, neither of which had yet made a confession. I'd sent Saul Panzer on standby to a diner 3 blocks down, with instructions to keep an eye out for anyone whose curiosity outweighed their coffee. The air in the office had that waiting room quality, quiet, measured, and slightly self-important. When I opened the door, Caspar Shellman walked in like he was used to rooms rearranging themselves to make space. He was about 50, compact, with hair so neat it looked disciplined into shape by contract. His face was pale and unmarked, his eyes the gray-blue shade of an old photograph, and his suit had the kind of tailoring that whispers, not shouts. Willa Dane followed him, looking as if she'd brought a leash for the occasion but wasn't sure who would need it. Mr. Wolfe, Shellman said as I led them in, you come highly recommended by people I didn't know were acquainted with you. I'm acquainted with many, Wolfe said without rising. You bring with you the 4 envelopes. Shellman handed them over without hesitation, his fingers exact. I assume Miss Dane has told you everything. She told me enough to require more, Wolfe said, taking the envelopes like a curator accepting relics. He stacked them edge to edge and regarded them as if they might confess if stared at long enough. These were delivered, each to a different client, by couriers who cannot identify the sender. Yes, Shellman said. Each client has since refused further contact with our firm. The timing is precise. 1 bill, 1 withdrawal, 1 silence. Which clients? Wolfe asked. Brandon Metals, Trace Lux Shipping, and an individual investor, Elise Rowan. Different sectors, no known connection. I made a note. 3 clients who shut their doors after $1 walked in. Either someone was settling debts, or someone wanted Shellman to believe he'd been paid off for the wrong reasons. You investigated, Wolfe said. And found? That the bills are too perfect, Shellman replied. The paper stock and print alignment match government issue, but the fibers show trace compounds, something synthetic, undetectable except under spectral light. Our analyst Klein believes it's an internal marker something used by certain government printing divisions before the war, but discontinued. Wolfe's eyes glinted, which is as close as he gets to applause. Fascinating. A bill that belongs to a past that did not happen. Miss Dane was right. It does not exist. Willa stood silent near the bookshelf, her posture polite but tight. I caught her looking toward Shellman twice, each time with the restraint of someone holding back a truth by its collar. Wolfe set the envelopes aside. You say you have 5 persons with access to your archive. Yourself, Miss Dane, Pierce, Klein, and Miss Calder. Which of them might find advantage in your embarrassment? Shellman hesitated a beat too long. They're loyal, he said finally. Wolfe sighed. Loyalty is a comforting illusion. It survives until provocation becomes opportunity. Meaning what? Shellman asked. Meaning, Wolfe said, that if one of your employees arranged this elaborate prank or provocation, it was not for mirth. Someone wishes to dissolve trust in your name, possibly to prepare for acquisition or ruin. That landed well enough to make Shellman's mouth tighten. We're not for sale. Everything is, Wolfe said mildly. Archie, you will visit the Shellman offices tomorrow morning. I want your eyes on that archive, the door, and the hands that keep its key. Got it, I said. Wolfe turned back to Shellman. And you will remain quiet about hiring me. The fewer who know, the better the leverage. Shellman nodded. If this is sabotage, we'll find it. Quickly, I hope. Quickly is not a virtue, Wolfe said. Accuracy is. He looked at Willa. Miss Dane, tell me again. The rearrangement in the kitchen. Was anything written? Any sign beyond the spices? No, but... She hesitated. There was an open envelope on the counter, empty. Mr. Shellman thought it was one of the earlier messages. But it wasn't one of the 4. It had his name on it. Just his name, and nothing inside. Wolfe's fingers tapped the arm of his chair, slow and rhythmic. A silent message, then. Whoever enters enjoys demonstration. They wish him to see the trace of their presence, and now Miss Dane receives her own empty message. Intriguing symmetry. Shellman's jaw tightened. You think they're inside my firm? I think they are inside your confidence, Wolfe said. That is a narrower circle. I escorted them out, and on the doorstep Willa paused again. Mr. Goodwin, she said quietly, if you're going to the office tomorrow, I can show you the archive first thing, 8 o'clock? That's before breakfast, which is a crime here, but I'll manage. She nodded. Don't let him see everything. He's proud, too proud, and he doesn't sleep well anymore. When she was gone, I went back to the office. Wolfe hadn't moved, but the stack of envelopes was now perfectly aligned by serial sequence. You believe her, I said. I believe she's frightened, Wolfe said, but not of Shellman's ruin, of something subtler. He finally took a sip of beer. Tomorrow, Archie, see the archive. Observe Miss Dane, Pierce, Klein, and Calder. And if you find a trace of cumin where it should not be, remember, the palate is never random. I grinned. And what about the dollar that never existed? Wolfe leaned back, eyes half closed. Its worth lies not in its value, but in the debt it represents. Someone is paying without paying, Archie. Let us see who is collecting. At 8 sharp the next morning, I was standing in front of the Shellman Agency's headquarters on West 48th, a neat brick building that looked like it had been built by someone who hated disorder and wasn't afraid to spend money proving it. The brass plaque by the door gleamed so bright it could have doubled as a witness. Inside, the air had that faint metallic chill that comes from good ventilation and quiet nerves. Willa Dane was waiting in the lobby, dressed in grey again, efficient and unflustered. She had the same air of composure, but the eyes gave away a night with too little sleep. You're early, she said. I believe in getting the first look before anyone's had time to sweep up, I told her. Where's the archive? She led me past a reception desk manned by a young woman who smiled like she'd been trained to do it on cue, down a corridor that looked long enough to double as a bowling alley, and into a smaller suite of offices that smelled faintly of paper, coffee, and the kind of secrets people overpay to keep. The archive door was metal, double-locked, with an electronic keypad. Willa keyed in a code that sounded like a tune only accountants would whistle. The lock gave a satisfied click, and we stepped in. It was smaller than I expected. Rows of cabinets, a couple of long tables, a set of file scanners that looked brand new. Everything was arranged with military precision. Only one thing seemed off. On the far table, a single open file folder lay waiting, like someone had left it mid-thought. "That wasn't open yesterday," Willa said immediately. I took a look. The file was labeled Project Halcyon Retained Accounts 2014. Inside were financial records, contracts, and a few sheets of notes written in tight, deliberate hand. The top page had a name I underlined in my head. Elise Rowan, the same client who'd gotten one of the mysterious bills. "Convenient coincidence," I said. "Or a message." She didn't answer. I crouched and checked the edges of the cabinet. The lock didn't show tampering, but a faint dust line on the floor suggested the drawer had been opened. Maybe twice. Someone who knew their way round. "Who's been in here since the breach attempt?" I asked. "Just me, Victor Klein, and Maris Calder. Haldy Pierce changed the access code right after we discovered the attempt, but I entered it this morning, that's all." "Where's Klein?" "In his lab, down the hall." I stood and dusted off my knees. "Let's pay him a visit." Klein's office was half laboratory, half war room. 2 walls of screens showed real-time data feeds. The other 2 were covered with whiteboards filled with formulas, charts, and handwriting that looked like it had been produced under emotional duress. The man himself was tall, thin, and prematurely gray at the temples, with an expression that said he'd rather explain physics to a house cat than people. Willa introduced me. He gave me one look that rated me just above a paperclip. "So you're Wolf's man," he said. "I assume you're here to see what the rest of us have already ruled out." "Exactly," I said cheerfully. "I like to see how other people miss the same things." He gave me a look sharp enough to qualify as a weapon. "The bills are counterfeit in appearance only. The print structure is authentic, down to the embedded thread. But the serial coding sequence is impossible. Whoever made them had access to information never released publicly." "Which means what?" I asked. "It means," he said, leaning closer to his screen, "that the creator either works for someone with access to government production systems or once did." Willa shot me a quick glance. "Could it be one of our former analysts?" "Possible," Klein said, "but not likely. This work isn't meant to fool anyone. It's a signal, not a forgery." That echoed Wolf's words from last night, and it didn't improve my appetite. I asked to see the courier envelopes. Klein passed one over with tweezers. It was the same crisp ivory stock as Willa's, with the same typed label. No fingerprints except for Shellman's, Willa's, and the messenger. But under ultraviolet, faint traces of an oily residue lined the flap. I recognized it. Anise. I thanked Klein for his time and left before he could remind me how little he liked sharing space with carbon-based life forms. Willa walked me to the lobby, quiet the whole way. "You were thinking something," I said. "Just that Haldy hates coriander," she said absently. "He says the smell makes him dizzy." "And the spice rack rearrangement featured coriander," I said. She nodded once. "But he wasn't at Shellman's house that night. He was with me. We were auditing an account late." She said it fast, and the color that rose in her cheeks didn't look like guilt so much as regret for saying more than she meant to. "Understood," I said lightly. "You don't have to justify late-night accounting. It's a thrilling profession." When I stepped outside, Saul Panzer was across the street pretending to read a newspaper. I crossed over, gave him the highlights, and he nodded. 3 possibilities, he said. Inside job, old grudge, or a client with more to lose than he admits. I'll shadow the archivist Calder. You see where Miss Dane leads. By the time I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was already at his desk, the envelope spread in a tidy fan and the violet gleaming under the lamp. He didn't look up when I came in. You have news, he said. An archive that cleans itself, a file that opens without hands, and an analyst who thinks the bills are messages from the afterlife of government printing. Good, Wolfe murmured. The illusion of ghosts serves well when guilt hides in light. There's also anise oil on one of the envelopes, I said, and a little coincidence involving coriander. Spices again, he said, eyes half-lidded. Patterns repeat when the author is confident. He finally looked up. Archie, summon Mr. Shellman and his 4 subordinates for tomorrow evening. 8 o'clock. It is time, he said, with the quiet finality of a man setting a chess piece in its destined square, to disturb the calm. The next evening brought rain, the kind that didn't fall so much as drift, the sky undecided whether to weep or whisper. Inside the brownstone, Wolfe had the temperature dialed up 2 degrees beyond civilized living, claiming it encouraged clarity. Fritz was in the kitchen perfecting veal shank, and I was preparing for what promised to be a lively gathering of suspects who hadn't yet decided they were suspects. By 8 o'clock, the doorbell started its career for the night. First came Willa Dane, calm and efficient in navy blue, though the faint tension around her mouth said she knew what was coming. Then Victor Klein, still gaunt and humorless, clutching a notepad as if he expected to have to take minutes. Maris Calder arrived next, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a librarian's poise, wearing the expression of someone who thought everyone else had already disappointed her. Holdy Pierce followed, square-jawed, polished, and wearing his discomfort like cologne. Finally, Caspar Shellman stepped in last, dry despite the rain, and nodded at me like a man rehearsing composure. Wolfe didn't rise, of course. He never does. He gestured to the semicircle of chairs I'd arranged before his desk. They filled them, each taking a seat as though the order mattered. Wolfe let silence expand until it was something you could set on a scale. Mr. Shellman, Wolfe said at last, you have assembled your associates. I have questions and you will all indulge me. You are all here because the boundaries of trust within your firm have been trespassed. Someone among you has, by action or complicity, permitted an intrusion that now threatens the integrity of your enterprise. I will discover who. Nobody breathed for a second. Then Pierce tried to smile. Mr. Wolfe, with respect, we've already gone over this. The intrusion attempt failed. The client withdrawals are coincidences. We're dealing with an eccentric prankster, nothing more. Eccentric, Wolfe repeated. An interesting euphemism for intelligent malice. Do you also categorize trespass under humor, Mr. Pierce? That earned a blush the size of a confession. Wolfe took a sip of beer before continuing. Miss Calder, he said, you have been archivist. For how long? 12 years, she said crisply. I manage access logs, system redundancies, and the physical file catalog. No breach occurred under my supervision. But the breach was attempted, Wolfe said, and the file labeled Project Halcyon was discovered open yesterday morning. Explain that. Her eyes narrowed. That file is sensitive. Legacy accounts from before my tenure. I hadn't touched it in months. If it was open, someone else used my key. Your key is electronic, Wolfe said, which means either you were careless with your access code or someone close enough to you has seen it used. She flushed. No one. I don't share credentials. Of course not, Wolfe murmured. Then we are left with inference. Someone observed you, perhaps, or possesses authority to override you. That made 3 pairs of eyes flick toward Shellman, who stiffened just enough to notice. He started to speak, But Wolfe lifted a hand. "Mr. Klein," he said, "you have been studying the bills. You described them as signals, not forgeries. Signals to whom?" Klein hesitated, then answered with academic precision. "If I had to guess, someone who understands the agency's early clientele. Those bills carry microcodes embedded in the fiber, patterns corresponding to our first major contract identifiers. Whoever produced them had access to internal reference tables that were destroyed years ago." Wolfe leaned back. "Destroyed or archived?" Klein frowned. "Archived, technically, but sealed. Those records are in Halcyon." "Ah." Wolfe's eyes drifted, satisfied. "So we returned to the opened file." Willis shifted in her chair. "Mr. Wolfe, if you're implying someone here reopened Halcyon deliberately, I can't believe that. We all rely on that trust." Wolfe turned to her, gaze cool but not unkind. "Miss Dane, belief is a luxury. Evidence is a necessity. Yesterday you told Mr. Goodwin that Mr. Pierce detests coriander. Would you like to elaborate?" The room stiffened. Pierce blinked, confused. "Coriander? What the devil does—" "She was illustrating preference," Wolfe said smoothly. "Yet it struck me as notable that the trespasser at Mr. Shellman's home chose to rearrange precisely those spices. An unsubtle message for a subtle mind." Pierce's mouth tightened. "I haven't set foot in his house in 6 months." "Yet you have keys," Wolfe said. "You are his security director. Access, authority, and motive. Ingredients as volatile as tarragon in a stew." Shellman's voice cut in, tense. "Haldy's been with me 15 years. He's loyal." Wolfe's head inclined an inch. "We have heard that word before." I watched Pierce's jaw flex. "If you're accusing me, say it plainly." "I do not accuse," Wolfe said. "I deduce. But deduction requires patience." The silence that followed was taut enough to strum. Fritz's faint clatter in the kitchen might as well have been thunder. Then Wolfe spoke again, quieter. "Someone here understands performance. The bills are not random. They are designed to evoke guilt. A settlement in symbolic currency addressed to those who benefited from deceit. The question, therefore, is, what debt is being collected?" Shellman exhaled sharply. "I told you, no such debt exists. Those accounts were clean." "Were they?" Wolfe said. "The Halcyon records show transactions that align with 3 names: Brandon Metals, Trace Lux Shipping, and Elise Rowan, all early clients, all recipients of your ghostly dollars. Miss Calder, who filed those contracts?" She swallowed. "Pierce authorized them. I just archived." Every head turned. Pierce rose halfway out of his chair. "This is ridiculous. Those were Shellman's directives. I handled logistics, not decisions." "Sit down," Wolfe said, softly enough to be lethal. "You are sweating, Mr. Pierce. Perspiration is a poor defense." He sank back, glaring. Wolfe steepled his fingers. "Miss Dane, you received an empty envelope. You alone. Why do you suppose you were spared the $1? She blinked, caught off guard. I don't know." "You do," Wolfe said. "You are the witness, not the debtor. Whoever orchestrates this knows you will notice patterns others deny." Shellman's hand clenched the arm of his chair. "If you have an accusation, make it." "In time," Wolfe said. "For now, you will all refrain from destroying or moving any records from Halcyon. Mr. Goodwin will visit your office again tomorrow, unannounced. He will observe interactions, routines, and perhaps appetites. The truth, Mr. Shellman, is in your kitchen, not your vault." That ended the evening. They filed out one by one, taut and silent. When the door closed behind the last of them, I turned to Wolfe. "So, you've got him." He picked up the nearest envelope, holding it between 2 fingers. "Not yet, but the scent is unmistakable. Someone is cooking with spices they no longer own." The morning after that parlor skirmish, the rain had washed the city clean enough to give the illusion of honesty. I left Wolfe communing with a breakfast of poached eggs and prickly silence and headed for the Shellman agency again. Wolfe had given no fresh instructions, just a grunt that translated to observe, infer, and don't be an idiot. I took that as permission to use initiative within reason, and possibly beyond it if opportunity looked interesting. When I arrived, the place felt wrong. The receptionist's cheerful smile had been replaced by something strained and temporary. Her greeting came out like a recorded message from someone who'd lost faith in the brand. I asked for Miss Dane. "She's in Mr. Shellman's office," she said. "Something's happened." That's a phrase you learn to dislike. I went down the corridor fast enough to count as concern, but not panic. The door was open. Willa stood inside, pale and tight-lipped, while Shellman loomed behind his desk with the fury of a man betrayed by his own mirror. On the desk lay a small evidence bag holding a burned scrap of paper. "Goodwin," Shellman said without preamble. "Someone tried to destroy records from the Halcyon archive last night." I moved closer. The scrap was blackened, but I could still make out the faint outline of the same serial sequence Wolfe had arranged on his desk the night before. Zeros leading the way like funeral attendants. "Where was this found?" I asked. "Near the service entrance," Willa said. "In the alley trash bin. The night janitor reported smoke around midnight." "Which of your 5 key holders worked late?" "Only Maris Calder," Shellman said. "She signed out at 11:30. That earned a low whistle from me. "She's prompt, I'll give her that. Did she say what she was doing?" "She said she was auditing inventory," Willa said. "Routine check before the month closes. But those logs are digital. She doesn't need to handle paper." "Unless she was making sure paper didn't handle her," I said. Shellman bristled. "You're implying my archivist is a criminal." "Not yet," I said. "But if she's innocent, she's due a medal for cooperation with the guilty." He glared, but said nothing. Willa stepped forward, lowering her voice. "She's not here this morning. She called in sick." "Of course she did," I said. "What's her address?" Willa hesitated, glancing at Shellman. "You'll find it in personnel records. But please, don't push her too hard. She's brittle. This place breaks people who think it won't." "I'll bring glue," I said, and headed out. Maris Calder lived in a narrow apartment house on East 66th, the kind of building that hadn't seen a paintbrush since Roosevelt I. Her door was ajar, which I didn't like. I knocked anyway. No answer. I stepped inside and found the kind of order that comes from leaving fast. A half-packed suitcase lay open on the bed, 2 drawers emptied. On the desk sat a stack of neatly arranged folders labeled with project names I didn't recognize. But what stopped me cold was the envelope propped against a teacup. Ivory paper, typed label, Miss Maris Calder. It wasn't sealed. Inside was a single $1 bill. One of the dollars, down to the eerie perfection and the ghostly serial number. So much for coincidence. I photographed everything, pocketed the envelope, and was heading for the door when a sound came from behind me. A soft creak. I turned in time to catch a shadow moving outside the frosted glass. The door nudged open an inch. "Easy," I said. "You're either lost or curious." The figure stepped inside. Pierce. He looked startled, which didn't flatter him. "Goodwin? What the hell are you doing here?" "I might ask you the same thing. Following me's a bad hobby. Following Miss Calder's worse." His mouth tightened. "She didn't show up. Shellman told me to check on her." "Sure," I said. "And bring your subtlety with you." I eyed his briefcase. "Expecting to collect souvenirs." He scowled. "You think I'm part of this?" "I think you're either part of it or close enough to get splashed," I said. "So far, the evidence likes you better than I do." He started to retort, but I held up the envelope. "Recognize this." Pierce's expression went from indignation to alarm too fast for my liking. Where did you get that? Right here, waiting on the ladies' table. Someone's paying their respects. He took a step forward, then froze when I didn't move. You think she... No, she couldn't. Maybe not. But she's scared. Scared people make bad decisions. Burning evidence, maybe calling someone they shouldn't. Where were you around midnight? He looked away. Home. With witnesses? He didn't answer. I let it hang. Fine, you'll get your turn with Wolfe. Don't make me drag you. I left before he could gather his dignity. By the time I reached the street, I called a cab and told the driver to head for West 35th. Wolfe doesn't like being disturbed between lunch and beer, but some disturbances can't wait for appetite. He was in his chair when I got there, a book in one hand and Fritz's latest culinary triumph untouched on the desk. I dropped the envelope in front of him. Maris Calder's apartment. She's gone. One of our non-existent dollars was waiting for her. He lifted the bill delicately, studying it under the lamp. Ah, the circle closes. Pierce showed up too, I added. Uninvited and nervous. Said he was sent by Shellman. I'd bet my socks he was hoping to find what I found first. Wolfe nodded slowly. Then the game advances. Miss Calder is either prey or penitent, and Mr. Pierce, it seems, is still playing with spices. You think she's running? Not running, he said. Being run. Someone is directing this symphony of guilt, and we are approaching the crescendo. He leaned back, eyes gleaming. Have Saul locate Miss Calder, discreetly, and Archie. Do not confront her yet. If she's alive, she will come to us soon enough. Those who hold counterfeit debts always do. He picked up the bill again, tilting it toward the light. A dollar that never existed, he murmured, and yet it buys obedience, fear, and silence. Remarkable economy. Saul called me a little after 7 that evening. When Saul Panzer says I've got her, you can skip the qualifiers. He doesn't think, he knows. She's holed up at a motel in Queens, he said. Registered under her own name, which is either carelessness or surrender. She hasn't left since early afternoon. No calls in or out that I could see, but someone dropped a package at her door an hour ago. White envelope, no return, mark. Same paper as before? Looks like it from here. I told him to keep eyes on her and hung up. Wolfe had just finished his second beer, which usually signals his willingness to tolerate reality. Miss Calder's in Queens, I said. Saul's watching. Someone just delivered another envelope. He grunted softly, eyes half closed. Predictable. When the puppeteer tires of performance, he cuts the strings himself. She will not open it immediately. Fear delays curiosity, but not for long. Want me to go? He nodded once. Yes, but with restraint. Observe her before you reveal yourself. We must know whether she fears discovery or hopes for rescue. 10 minutes later, I was in a cab heading east, with rain clouds gathering like old gossip over the river. By the time I reached the motel, a long row of tired doors and half-hearted neon, the streetlights had begun their lonely flicker. Saul was in his car across the street, calm as a monk, binoculars balanced on the steering wheel. She's in room 12, he said quietly as I leaned in. Curtains drawn, light on. She's pacing. The envelope still sealed, sitting on the nightstand. Good, I said. If she opens it, maybe we get a confession without the sermon. We waited. 10 minutes later, she stopped pacing and sat on the edge of the bed. From where we sat, the shadow of her hands trembled. She opened the envelope. Saul adjusted the focus. There's something inside. A card, I think. She's reading it. Now, wait, she's crying. I didn't wait. I crossed the street and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Then I heard movement. A chair scraping. The lock clicked once. Then the door opened a crack. Her face appeared in the slit of light, pale and hollow. Mr. Goodwin. Evening, I said quietly. You didn't expect flowers, did you? Can I come in? She hesitated, then opened the door fully. The room smelled of rain and fear. The card lay on the bedspread, thick ivory stock, no signature, just one line typed neat and cold. Payment received. Rest easy. She caught me looking. I didn't do anything wrong, she said suddenly. Her voice had that brittle edge people use when they're one word away from falling apart. I just kept the files. That's all. I didn't— Miss Calder, I said, keeping my tone level, you burned evidence from Halcyon last night. Her mouth fell open. Then she dropped onto the bed, shoulders shaking. I thought it would stop. He said it would stop if I did what he asked. Who's he? She rubbed her face with both hands. Pierce. He came to my apartment 2 nights ago. He said Mr. Shellman was being blackmailed, that the bills were meant to destroy the agency. He said we had to make it go away, erase the old records, the connections. I believed him. Did he give you those bills? She nodded. He said they were copies of the originals. Evidence of fraud. That Mr. Shellman had hidden transactions years ago. He told me to burn anything tied to Halcyon, and I'd be protecting everyone. He even promised a bonus. That fit, but not neatly enough. And the envelopes? I thought he was behind those too at first, but then I got one myself this morning. She pointed at a second envelope near the dresser, unopened, untouched. Same ivory paper, same type. I picked it up, weighing it. It was thicker than the others. I slid it open just enough to peek. Inside was a small photograph, creased and faded. Pierce and Shellman, younger by a decade, standing beside a warehouse marked Halcyon Logistics. Both were shaking hands with a third man whose face had been scorched out with a cigarette burn. I replaced it carefully. You're coming with me, I said. No, she said quickly, rising. If he knows I talked— He already knows more than's healthy for him, I said. You'll be safer where we are. Wolfe doesn't allow trespasses, physical or moral. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe received her like a court judge receives a confession, with quiet inevitability. She sat rigid in front of his desk while I laid the photograph and note before him. He studied them without touching either. Mr. Pierce, he said, was clever enough to appear indispensable. A man in his position collects debts in confidence. Mr. Shellman's loyalty blinded him. Tell me, Miss Calder, did Mr. Pierce ever mention the man in this photograph? She shook her head. He just said the name Halcyon was better forgotten. Wolfe nodded once. Indeed. Halcyon was the shell company through which Shellman financed certain private contracts. Unregistered, discreet, and profitable. When they closed it, someone retained the client ledgers, and now someone wishes to remind him of them. Pierce, I said. He's extorting his own boss. Not extortion, Wolfe said. Reclamation. He believes himself owed. These symbolic payments are his signature. A mock settlement for debts never honored. But his artistry betrayed him. The spices, the notes, the sequence of deliveries, all too deliberate. He wants Shellman to see the pattern, not just fear it. That is vanity, Archie. Vanity destroys subtlety. Miss Calder stared at him, eyes wide. Then what happens now? Now, Wolfe said, you will remain here until I call. Mr. Goodwin, summon Mr. Shellman and Mr. Pierce for tomorrow evening. Tell them we have the account reconciled. I raised an eyebrow. And when they ask what kind of account? Tell them, Wolfe said, settling back with the faintest smile. It concerns a dollar that never existed, but a debt that most certainly does. Now, generate the final section of the story, ensuring a satisfying resolution. Maintain the logical progression of clues and character arcs, delivering the final reveal smoothly while keeping the ending impactful and true to the detective style.